"Where is my wife?" Alpha King Kale Draven asked, and the Winter Council dining hall went silent. His chair waited at the head of the long oak table, but the seat beside it was empty. Alara Vale's name card was gone. Kale looked across nearly 100 guests beneath the crystal chandeliers. "I asked where my wife is." A noblewoman finally lowered her eyes. "Your Majesty, we were told she had been reassigned." Kale went completely still. "Reassign my wife to what?" No one answered. Behind the closed service doors, Alara stood beneath the warm kitchen lamps with a silver tray balanced between her hands. A young servant rushed into the corridor, breathless. "The king is here." Every face around Alara changed. Grace Miller stopped arranging plates. Mira looked toward the doors with alarm. Alara lowered her eyes to the polished tray, then toward the room where the man who believed she should be sitting beside him had just discovered she was missing. 6 hours earlier, none of this had begun with an insult. It had begun with the sound of folded linens falling onto a marble floor. Alara had been resting in Blackstone's east wing when she heard the crash outside her door. She stepped into the corridor and found an older servant kneeling beside a wicker basket, hurriedly gathering white sheets that had spilled across the floor. Alara recognized her from breakfast. Grace Miller had served at Blackstone for decades, and that morning she had looked tired enough to need the rest more than anyone. "Please, Your Grace," Grace said when Alara bent beside her. "You should not be doing this. Neither should you be doing it alone." Alara gathered several sheets and returned them to the basket. Grace glanced nervously toward the staircase. "If Mrs. Hale sees you helping me, she will blame me." Alara paused. "For dropping linens? For allowing you to touch them?" Before Alara could answer, measured footsteps approached. "How generous." Victoria Hale stood at the end of the corridor. She had served for years as Madeline Voss's senior deputy, which meant that when Madeline lost her authority, temporary control of Blackstone's household had fallen to Victoria until Kale appointed a permanent replacement. She wore a severe gray dress and carried a ring of household keys at her waist. Her smile was polite enough to belong at court. Her eyes were not. "The king's bride assisting with laundry," Victoria said. "Blackstone has certainly become informal." Alara rose slowly. Grace dropped something. I helped her pick it up. "Of course." Victoria turned her pleasant smile toward Grace. The older woman immediately lowered her eyes. Alara noticed. "There is no reason to reprimand her. I would never dream of it." Victoria glanced at the basket. "We are simply overwhelmed today. Winter Council has brought nearly 100 guests into the palace." She paused, then looked directly at Alara. "Since Your Grace is so eager to help, perhaps you would not mind carrying those linens to the guest wing." Alara understood the trap immediately. Refusing would make her appear proud. Agreeing would give Victoria an image she could use. Then Alara looked at Grace's tired hands. "Show me where they go," she said. Victoria smiled. "How kind." It should have ended with the linens. Alara carried the basket beside Grace to the guest wing, placed it on a cedar table, and expected to return to her rooms. Before she could leave, a young servant approached with a stack of folded tablecloths. "Forgive me, Your Grace. Mrs. Hale said you offered to help with the Winter Council preparations." Grace looked horrified. She did not offer to work. Alara understood immediately. Victoria had taken one act of kindness and quietly turned it into permission. "Where do these go?" Alara asked. "The dining hall." Grace touched her arm. "You do not have to do this." "I know." That mattered to Alara. She was helping because she chose to, not because Victoria Hale had decided what an Omega bride deserved. She carried the tablecloths downstairs and returned to the east wing. 20 minutes later, another request arrived. This time, it was a wooden case of polished silverware. Each task was small enough to appear harmless. Together, they created exactly the image Victoria wanted. By 1 o'clock, servants were whispering. Soon afterward, visiting nobles began watching Alara as though helping one exhausted woman had somehow changed her rank. Mira found her near the grand staircase, carrying the silverware case. "I have been looking everywhere for you." Her eyes dropped to the box. "Why are you carrying that?" "Because someone has decided kindness is a job assignment." Mira immediately understood. "Victoria." Alara nodded. "Come upstairs. Kale asked you to remain in the east wing. He requested it. That distinction is becoming inconvenient." Alara almost smiled. Then she noticed Grace across the hall, struggling to organize place settings while two other servants hurried past with dinner supplies. They are short-handed. That is Victoria's problem. It becomes Grace's problem when Victoria decides to blame her. Mira lowered her voice. And it becomes yours when you keep solving it. Alara knew she was right. Before she could answer, Victoria approached carrying a cream-colored memorandum. Several visiting nobles stood nearby, close enough to hear. Lady Alara, Victoria said with practiced sympathy, I am afraid there has been some confusion regarding your position in the household. Alara looked at the document. What confusion? Victoria unfolded it. According to this memorandum, your marriage does not grant full household rank until the Winter Council formally ratifies the treaty. Mira stared at her. The king publicly called Alara his wife yesterday. The king's personal acknowledgement and formal household standing are separate matters. Victoria turned the document so Alara could see the royal seal. Until ratification, Lady Alara is classified as a treaty dependent. A nobleman nearby extended an empty glass toward Alara with an amused smile. Then perhaps you can take this as well. A few people laughed softly. Alara looked at the glass, but did not reach for it. Helping is something freely given, she said. Service demanded under a lie is something else. The laughter disappeared. Victoria's smile tightened. Are you accusing the royal household of lying? I am questioning a document that appeared less than a day after someone used a forged royal order against me. The nobles stopped pretending not to listen. Alara looked directly at Victoria. Have Rowan Thorne verify it. Commander Thorne is occupied. Then we wait. For the first time, irritation showed beneath Victoria's polished expression. She folded the memorandum. Unfortunately, dinner preparations cannot wait. Her gaze shifted toward Grace. If service falls behind tonight, someone will have to answer for it. Grace went pale. Alara saw the trap clearly now. Victoria could not force her to serve. She did not need to. She only needed to make an innocent woman pay whenever Alara refused. Alara held Victoria's gaze for several seconds. How many people are missing from dinner service? Victoria seemed surprised by the question. 4. Why? 2 are ill. 1 was reassigned to the council chamber. Another has not reported for duty. And Grace is expected to cover the difference. Grace is expected to perform the responsibilities of her position. Alara looked toward the older servant. Grace had already been working since before sunrise, yet she was arranging place settings with the nervous urgency of someone who believed one mistake could cost her everything. Then I will help her until dinner begins. Mira stepped closer. Alara, I know what Victoria is doing. Then do not give her what she wants. Alara lowered her voice. If I walk away now, Grace pays for a fight she never chose. Mira looked frustrated because she knew Alara was right. Victoria offered a graceful nod. How admirable. Alara turned toward her. Do not mistake my decision for obedience. I am helping Grace. I am not serving you. For an instant, Victoria's pleasant expression disappeared. Then the smile returned. Of course. Alara spent the next hour helping prepare the dining hall, but she refused every attempt to turn assistance into submission. When a noblewoman pointed toward a dropped napkin without speaking, Alara walked past it. When another guest held out an empty cup, she ignored him. She carried table settings because Grace needed them moved. She checked the final place cards because a young attendant was overwhelmed. The difference mattered, even if the people watching her pretended it did not. The rumors grew anyway. 1. Visiting lord whispered that Kale had already regretted the marriage. Another claimed the Winter Council had refused to recognize an Omega bride. By late afternoon, Alara heard someone say the king had personally ordered her removed from the royal household. She almost laughed. Kale had done no such thing. That morning, before leaving for the council session, he had stood beside the East Wing fireplace and asked her to stay there until he returned. He had said it was a request rather than an order. Somehow, within hours, Blackstone had transformed that request into exile from her own position. Your Grace. Grace approached carrying a list of seating assignments. There is something you should see. Alara took the page. At the top of the table sat Alpha King Kale Draven. Beside his name was an empty space. Where's my name? Grace whispered. It was there this morning. Mira moved closer. Who changed it? Grace looked toward Victoria. Alara handed the list back. I will ask her myself. She found Victoria near the service corridor, supervising the final preparations. My place beside Kale has been removed. Victoria barely glanced up. The seating was adjusted. By whom? The household office. You are the household office. Victoria finally faced her. Until your rank is formally confirmed, seating you beside the king could create unnecessary confusion. Alara stared at her. Yesterday I was his wife. Today I helped an exhausted servant. And suddenly my marriage is confusing? The memorandum is clear. The memorandum has not been verified. Neither has your rank. Alara felt the insult, but she refused to let it choose her response. Put my name back. Victoria's expression remained calm. I cannot do that without proper authority. A movement behind them drew Alara's attention. Grace was trying to lift a large silver serving tray from a preparation table. Her hands trembled beneath its weight. Victoria noticed too. Dinner service begins shortly, she said. If Grace cannot complete her assignment, I will have to record the failure. Alara understood the final move. Mira caught her arm. Do not. Alara looked at Grace, then at the empty place on the seating list. Slowly, she crossed the corridor and took the tray from the older woman's hands. Your Grace, no? Grace whispered. Alara balanced it carefully. A tray cannot decide who I am. Then the council bells rang from the western tower. A servant rushed through the kitchen doors, breathless. The session ended early. Victoria turned sharply. How early? The servant swallowed. The king is already on his way here. For the first time that afternoon, Victoria Hale looked genuinely unsettled. He was not expected for another hour. The servant shook his head. Commander Thorne ended the final session early. They are crossing the West Gallery now. Around them, the kitchen staff moved faster, but Alara remained still with the silver tray in her hands. Mira looked toward the dining hall doors. Put it down. Alara almost did. Then she saw Grace struggling to finish the last service station alone. If Alara abandoned the train now, Victoria would still find a way to make the older woman responsible. I said I would help until dinner begins. Dinner is beginning. Then this is the last one. Grace stepped closer. Please, Your Grace. I can manage. Alara gave her a gentle look. You have been managing since before sunrise. Let someone help you for 5 minutes. She carried the tray into the service corridor while the first council guests entered the dining hall beyond the closed doors. She could hear chairs moving, low conversation, and the formal announcement of arriving nobles. Victoria followed, speaking quietly to 2 attendants. Lady Alara will remain here until the seating issue is resolved. Alara turned. I will do no such thing. Victoria's smile returned, but now it required effort. The memorandum has not been overturned. It has not been verified either. Entering the royal table without recognized rank would create a public dispute. You created the dispute when you removed my name. Several servants looked down, pretending not to hear. Victoria stepped closer. Think carefully. If you walk into that room and the council refuses your position, you will embarrass yourself in front of every important family in the north. Alara understood. Then that humiliation had always been the goal. The Linens had merely provided the first image. The memorandum had given the rumor authority. Removing her place card had turned the rumor into something the court could see. You are very concerned about saving me from embarrassment, Alara said. Victoria's eyes cooled. I am concerned with protecting Blackstone. From what? Alara asked. It's King's wife. Victoria said nothing. The doors at the far end of the dining hall opened. The room beyond grew quiet. Alara could not see Cale from where she stood, but she knew he had entered because every servant around her straightened at once. Then his voice carried through the hall. Where is my wife? Alara's fingers tightened slightly around the tray. Mira glanced at her, and Grace stopped breathing for what seemed like a second. No one in the dining hall answered. Cale asked again. I asked where my wife is. A noblewoman finally spoke, her voice faint through the closed service doors. Your Majesty, we were told she had been reassigned. Silence followed. Then Cale's reply came, calm enough to make Victoria lose the last color in her face. Reassign my wife to what? Alara looked at Victoria. The question that had sounded like gossip all afternoon had suddenly become very real. Victoria moved toward the doors, but before she reached them, they opened from the other side. Rowan Thorne stood there. His gaze passed over Victoria and landed immediately on Alara holding the silver tray. His expression changed. Lady Alara. Behind him, Cale remained beside the empty chair at the head of the table. Even from across the room, Alara could see his attention settle on her. Then his eyes dropped to the tray. He did not look angry at her. That somehow made the silence heavier. Cale looked toward Victoria. Mrs. Hale. She stepped forward. Your Majesty, there has been a misunderstanding regarding Lady Alara's formal status. No, Cale said. There has been a misunderstanding regarding yours. Rowan entered the service corridor. Where is the memorandum? Victoria hesitated before producing it. Rowan took the document and examined the seal, then the tiny procurement mark, pressed near its lower edge. His expression hardened. Your Majesty. Cale looked at him. Rowan held up the page. This document was created recently. Victoria stared at him. That is impossible. Royal paper is issued in numbered batches. This sheet came from a batch delivered to Blackstone 11 weeks ago. Rowan turned the memorandum over. The decree printed on it claims to be 6 years old. The corridor became completely silent. Cale looked from the forged document to Alara, then to the tray still resting in her hands. Someone had used false royal authority against his wife for the second time in less than 24 hours. Cale crossed the service corridor without looking at anyone except Alara. He stopped in front of her and glanced once at the silver tray. Did I ask you to do this? No. Did anyone tell you that you had to? Alara looked toward Victoria. Not directly. Cale understood immediately. Then why are you carrying it? Before Alara could answer, Grace stepped forward. Your Majesty, please do not blame Lady Alara. She was helping me. We were short-handed, and I could not keep up. Alara added quietly. Grace has been working since before sunrise. Cale looked at the older servant. Were you told you would be held responsible if dinner service fell behind? Grace hesitated. Her eyes moved toward Victoria. That was enough. Cale turned. Mrs. Hale. Victoria straightened. Every member of the household has responsibilities, Your Majesty. Alara is not a member of your staff. The memorandum indicated that her household rank remained unconfirmed. Rowan held up the document. The memorandum is false. Victoria's composure finally cracked. I did not create it. I did not say you did, Rowan replied. Then you have no cause to accuse me. Cale's voice remained controlled. You used an unverified document to remove my wife from her place at my table. Victoria looked toward the dining hall. I was trying to avoid confusion during a formal council dinner. You created confusion. Cale's gaze shifted to the tray. And then you allowed that confusion to become humiliation. Alara saw fear enter Victoria's expression. It would have been easy to remain silent and let Cale decide everything. Instead, she spoke. Grace did nothing wrong. Cale looked at her. I know. Neither did the servants who followed Victoria's instructions. I know that too. Alara glanced toward the kitchen staff. They believed the memorandum was legitimate. Cale studied her for a moment, and something in his expression softened. Less than a day earlier, after surviving a night outside the palace, Alara had asked him to distinguish cruelty from fear. She was doing it again now. Cale reached for the silver tray. Alara released it into his hands. He passed it carefully to a nearby attendant rather than dropping it or treating the work itself as beneath him. Then he turned back to her and extended his hand. Come with me. Alara looked at his open palm. Where? To dinner. Cale, my name was removed from the seating list. I noticed. Victoria says the council has not confirmed my rank. The council does not decide whether you are my wife. His hand remained between them. Around the corridor, no one moved. Alara placed her hand in his. Cale led her through the service doors. Nearly 100 guests watched them cross the dining hall together. Some looked embarrassed. Others simply stared. The nobleman who had offered Alara his empty glass earlier lowered his eyes before she passed him. Cale stopped beside the empty chair at the head of the table. He looked down at the place where her name card had been removed. This seat was prepared for my wife. His voice carried to every corner of the room. Then he looked toward Victoria. Who removed her name? She remained near the doors. I authorized the seating change. On the authority of a forged memorandum. On what I believed was a legitimate order. Cale nodded once. Then the investigation will determine what you believed and when you believed it. Victoria's face went pale. Your Majesty, effective immediately, you no longer hold temporary authority over this household. Your office, records, and keys will be secured until Rowan completes his investigation. Cale turned toward the servants. No member of the staff will be punished for following instructions they reasonably believed were lawful. Grace lowered her head in visible relief. Alara looked at Cale. He had remembered. Fear was not cruelty. Kale pulled out the empty chair for her. Alara sat. Only then did he take his own place beside her. Alara Vale is my wife, he said. Her place here does not depend on rumor, household preference, or a document that never existed. No one challenged him. Dinner finally began, but Rowan did not touch his food. He remained focused on the forged memorandum beneath the candlelight. Several minutes later, he leaned toward Kale. There is another problem. Kale lowered his voice. What? Rowan pointed to the procurement mark. This paper came from the private record supply. Alara heard him. The same office Evelyn Mercer worked in. Rowan looked at her. Exactly. The humiliation at dinner had just become evidence. Dinner continued beneath the glow of the chandeliers, but the mood had changed. The room that had whispered about Alara only minutes earlier now seemed careful around her. She could feel people watching when she lifted her glass, when Kale spoke quietly to Rowan, even when Grace passed through the room, carrying a basket of bread. Alara felt no satisfaction in their discomfort. She had never wanted servants beneath her or nobles afraid of her. She had wanted one simple thing since arriving at Blackstone: to be treated as though her dignity did not depend on what others believed an Omega deserved. Across the table, the nobleman who had offered her his empty glass earlier avoided her eyes. Alara could have embarrassed him. Instead, she let the silence do what anger could not. Beside her, Kale noticed. You could make this room very uncomfortable if you wanted. It already is. That is not what I meant. Alara glanced at him. Humiliating them will not undo what happened. Kale studied her for a moment. You make forgiveness sound dangerous. It can be, when people mistake it for permission. Something almost like approval moved through his expression. And have you forgiven Victoria? I have not decided what she deserves yet. Good. Alara raised an eyebrow. You approve of uncertainty? I approve of you not. Excusing cruelty simply because you understand it. Before Alara could answer, Rowan leaned closer. The forged memorandum rested beside his untouched plate. I need to check the private records inventory. Kale's attention sharpened. Tonight. Now. The procurement mark tells us the paper came from a restricted supply. Only a small number of people should have access to it. Alara lowered her voice. Including Evelyn Mercer. Until yesterday, yes. Rowan looked at Kale. If the same supply was used for the false order that sent Alara outside, we may be dealing with one source. Kale rose. Several guests immediately began to stand, but he lifted a hand. Continue dinner. He looked toward Alara. Come with me. It was a question. She noticed that. Yes. They left through a side corridor with Rowan and descended toward the royal archive. The palace became quieter with every turn. By the time they reached the older stone passage beneath the west gallery, the sounds of dinner had disappeared entirely. The royal archivist was waiting for them beside a long wooden table. On it rested the envelope found beneath Evelyn Mercer's floorboards. The crescent pressed into its dark wax seemed even more unsettling beneath the lamplight. Alara instinctively touched the mark hidden beneath her sleeve. Kale noticed, but said nothing. You finished examining it? Rowan asked. The archivist nodded. The paper and wax are authentic. How old? Alara asked. The man hesitated. At least 18 years. The answer seemed to change the air in the room. Alara stared at the envelope. Her full name was written across its front. That cannot be right. I repeated the examination, the archivist said. The materials are considerably older than anything produced recently. Kale stepped closer to the table. Someone wrote Alara's name on this 18 years ago? That appears to be the case. Rowan frowned. Evelyn Mercer is 30. The archivist looked at him. According to her employment file, Alara understood before anyone said it. She would have been 12. Silence followed. Kale looked at the sealed envelope, then at Alara. We have spent 2 days reacting to things other people wanted us to believe. His hand moved toward the seal. Not anymore. The archivist gave him a small letter knife. Kale carefully opened the envelope and removed a single folded page. Alara stepped beside him as he unfolded it. There was no confession inside. No explanation. Only a charcoal drawing of a crescent-shaped mark. Alara slowly pulled back her sleeve. The drawing matched her birthmark exactly, even the tiny break along its lower curve. Beneath it, someone had written a single warning. Kale read the words aloud. If the girl with the crescent reaches Blackstone, do not let the Northern Court learn what she is. Alara stared at the sentence. Not who she was. What she was. Then Kale turned the page over. A name had been written on the back. Evelyn Mercer. For several seconds, Alara could only stare at Evelyn Mercer's name. The warning on the other side of the page had been written nearly 18 years ago, yet the woman who had hidden it beneath her floorboards was supposedly only 30. The numbers refused to fit. Could the archivist be wrong about the age of the letter? Alara asked. I checked it twice, the man replied. The paper, ink, and wax are all consistent with the same period. Rowan folded his arms. Then Evelyn's employment records are false. Cale looked toward him. Verify everything. The archivist crossed to a cabinet and returned with a narrow leather folder. Her original appointment file is here. Rowan opened it beneath the lamplight. The first pages appeared ordinary. Employment application. PAC registry. References. An oath of service signed 6 years earlier. Then he reached the birth record and stopped. This seal should not be here. Alara moved closer. Why? Rowan pointed to the faded emblem at the bottom of the document. It belonged to a regional registry office that closed 22 years ago. This record claims it was issued 12 years ago. Cale's expression hardened. So Evelyn Mercer is not Evelyn Mercer. Not the woman who worked inside Blackstone, Rowan said. Alara looked again at the crescent drawing. Whoever Evelyn truly was, she had spent 6 years inside the palace with access to private records. 6 years waiting for something. Or someone. Who approved her appointment? Alara asked. The archivist searched the final page. His face changed. Madeline Voss. Rowan looked toward Cale. That explains how she entered the records office. It does not explain why she disappeared before Madeline was questioned, Alara said. Cale turned to her. What are you thinking? If Evelyn was loyal to Madeline, she should have stayed long enough to know whether Madeline could protect her. Instead, she vanished before anyone knew to look for her. Rowan slowly nodded, meaning Madeline may have opened the door for her without knowing who she really was. The thought settled heavily over the room. Madeline's resentment could explain cruelty. Victoria's ambition could explain humiliation. Neither explained an 18-year-old letter carrying Alara's name. A knock sounded at the archive door. Mira entered holding Alara's travel case against her chest. Forgive me, Your Majesty. I found something while unpacking the belongings brought to the East Wing this morning. Alara frowned. What? Mira set the case on the table and opened it. There was a loose seam inside the lining. I thought it had torn during the journey, but the stitching had been opened and sewn closed again. She reached beneath the fabric and removed a folded note. Cale immediately looked at Rowan. That case entered Blackstone before we secured the East Wing. Before we knew anyone inside the palace was targeting Alara, Rowan replied. Mira handed the note to Cale. He unfolded it carefully. Only one sentence had been written across the page. His expression changed as he read it. Alara held out her hand. Let me see. Cale hesitated only a moment before giving it to her. She read the words silently. Stop searching the records if you want the truth about your mother to remain buried. Mira whispered, Alara, but Alara read the sentence again. Whoever had hidden the note expected fear. They expected the mention of her mother to make her retreat. Instead, a strange calm settled over her. They made a mistake. Cale stepped closer. What mistake? Alara raised her eyes from the page. They told us where to look. Rowan glanced toward the old records surrounding them. Your mother. Alara nodded. Clara Vale never told me she had been to Blackstone. Her fingers tightened around the note. Now I want to know why someone is so afraid I will discover that she had. Rowan did not need long to find the name. The Royal Archive kept visitor registries dating back generations, and Clara Vale appeared in a leather-bound volume from 19 years earlier. Alara stood beside him as he traced the faded entry with one finger. Clara Vale, he read. Guest of the royal household. 11 days. Alara stared at her mother's name. That was before I was born. Approximately a year before, Rowan said. Cale moved closer. Does it say why she came? Rowan checked the adjoining columns. No purpose listed. No sponsoring family. No official audience recorded. Who ruled Blackstone then? Alara asked. Cale answered quietly. My father. She looked at him. Until that moment, the mystery had belonged mostly to her past. Now their histories had touched before either of them had known the other existed. Alara tried to remember every story Clara had told her as a child. Her mother had spoken about southern forests, harvest celebrations, neighboring packs, and winters spent near the mountains. Never Blackstone. Never the Northern Court. There should be a departure entry, the archivist said. Rowan turned several pages. There is not. Could she simply have left without signing out? Alara asked. Possible, Rowan replied, but unusual for a registered royal guest. Cale looked toward the threatening note on the table. Or someone removed the record. Alara felt the weight of her mother's silver comb in her pocket. She had carried it with her since arriving at Blackstone, one of the few belongings that still made an unfamiliar palace feel connected to home. She left me letters, Alara said suddenly. Cale turned. Your mother? A wooden box filled with them. She told me they were private and asked me not to open them until after she died. Where is the box? Rowan asked. At my family home, nearly 300 miles south. Cale answered immediately. I will send someone I trust. No. The firmness in Alara's voice surprised even her. Cale studied her rather than challenging her. Why? Because whoever hid that note knew about my mother. If they know where I came from, they may know about the box too. She looked at the old registry. I will not send someone into something we do not understand. Cale was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. When it is safe, we go together. Alara looked at him. He had not said he would send guards with her. He had said we. Something warm settled quietly beneath her uncertainty. Rowan continued examining the registry and noticed a thin sheet tucked inside the back cover. There is another record. He unfolded it carefully. An inventory transfer. Cale leaned over the table. For what? Rowan read the faded handwriting. One sealed medical record placed in restricted storage under Clara Vale's name. Alara's breath caught. Does it say whose medical record? No. Only a storage number. The archivist crossed the room to consult an old catalog. That section is below us. It has not been routinely used in years. Minutes later, they descended a narrow stone staircase into Blackstone's oldest archive. Lantern light moved across rows of wooden compartments marked with faded brass numbers. Rowan found the correct section and stopped before a narrow cabinet. Here, the small door stood slightly open. Cale noticed it at the same moment. Do not touch anything yet. Rowan examined the latch. The lock is intact. Alara frowned. Then why is it open? The archivist looked confused. It should not be. Rowan carefully opened the compartment. Inside rested a narrow wooden case. Alara's heart quickened as he lifted it onto a nearby table. The case was lighter than expected. Rowan opened the lid. Empty. Someone had removed whatever Clara Vale placed there 19 years ago. We were too late, Alara whispered. Maybe, Cale said. Rowan examined the inside of the box. Not entirely. A small card had been pressed beneath the inner lining. He handed it to Alara. One side carried the same broken crescent symbol as her birthmark. She turned it over. 7 handwritten words waited on the other side. Cale read them over her shoulder. The girl must never sit beside the king. Alara stared at the message. Only hours earlier, someone had removed her name from the chair beside Cale. What had seemed like petty humiliation suddenly looked like something else entirely. Not an insult invented that afternoon, but an instruction someone had been waiting 19 years to obey. For a long moment, no one spoke. Alara held the card beneath the lantern light, reading the 7 words again as though they might change. They did not. The girl must never sit beside the king. Only hours earlier, Victoria had removed Alara's name from the chair beside Cale. Before that, someone had forged a memorandum claiming her marriage did not grant her full standing in Blackstone. And the night before, another forged order had sent her outside the palace before Cale returned. 3 separate acts. One result. Keep Alara away from the Alpha King. This cannot be coincidence, Rowan said. Cale's expression remained controlled, but Alara had learned enough about him to recognize the anger beneath his stillness. No, he replied. It cannot. Rowan examined the empty wooden case. If this card has been here since the medical record was placed in storage under Clara Vale's name, then someone knew nearly 19 years ago that Alara might one day be connected to Blackstone's king. Alara looked at Cale. But your marriage agreement with my family was arranged only months ago, which means the marriage may not have started this, Cale said. It may have triggered something that was already waiting. The thought sent a quiet chill through Alara. All her life, she had believed herself ordinary even by Omega standards. She had grown up far from royal courts, carrying a birthmark her mother dismissed as meaningless. Yet someone had hidden a medical record under Clara's name. Someone had drawn that exact mark 18 years ago. A woman living under a false identity had spent 6 years inside Blackstone. And now someone was frightened by the simple fact that Alara sat beside Kale. Why? She whispered. Kale looked at the card. That is what they do not want us to learn. Rowan searched the compartment again. There may be another way. Restricted transfers were recorded twice. Once here, and once in the king's private archive. Kale turned toward him. My father's records? Yes. Search them tonight. Rowan nodded. Alara looked back at the empty case. Whoever took the medical record knew we would eventually find this compartment. Perhaps, Kale said. Then why leave the card? Alara asked. Rowan paused. Kale understood the question immediately. If someone had wanted to erase every trace of Clara's secret, they could have removed both the record and the warning. Instead, they had left behind the most provocative clue. Maybe they wanted us to find it, Alara said. Rowan's expression tightened. Then the question is why? Kale reached for the card, but instead of taking it, he gently folded Alara's fingers around it. We stop assuming every clue is help. She nodded. And every warning is a threat. Exactly. They returned upstairs shortly before midnight. Blackstone had grown quiet. The Winter Council guests withdrawn to their rooms, and the dining hall emptied. When they passed through it, Alara stopped. Her name card had been restored beside Kale's chair. Someone had found it and placed it carefully against her glass. Alara stared at the small ivory card. That morning, the seat had been little more than a formal place at a royal table. Now she understood that someone had feared what it represented long before she ever arrived. Kale stopped beside her. You do not have to prove that you belong there. Alara looked at him. I know. Do you? She considered the question. Then she picked up the name card. Yesterday, I might have needed everyone in this palace to believe it. Her eyes moved toward the chair. Tonight, I only need to know why someone spent 19 years trying to keep it empty. Kale's gaze softened. Then we find out. Alara looked at the man she had married for duty and realized that somewhere between the snow, the forged orders, and a silver tray, he had stopped feeling like a stranger. Not because he had rescued her. Not because he was a king. Because each time someone tried to decide who she was for her, Kale had asked what she believed instead. She placed the name card back beside his. Then Rowan appeared at the doorway. He should have been searching the private archive. Instead, he held an old leather ledger against his chest, his face unusually pale. Your Majesty, I found the duplicate record. Kale turned. And Rowan approached slowly. The medical file was transferred under Clara Vale's name, but she was not the person who authorized the transfer. Alara felt her heartbeat quicken. Who did? Rowan opened the ledger and placed it on the table. Beneath Clara's name was a royal signature. Kale recognized it instantly. My father. Rowan nodded. King Aldrich ordered the record hidden 19 years ago. Alara stared at the faded signature. Kale said nothing. Rowan turned one more page. There is something else. Your father left a restriction attached to the file. What restriction? Rowan looked first at Kale, then at Alara. It was never to be opened unless the girl with the crescent married the future Alpha King. The room became completely silent. Alara looked at the chair beside Kale, then at the crescent mark beneath her sleeve. Their marriage had not accidentally uncovered an old secret. Someone 19 years ago had been waiting for it.